I happened to come across a story about a high-speed rail system to be put in Texas, so I decided to look into it a bit. Apparently, it's not just for Texas, but the whole nation. The high-speed rail will be produced by Amtrak, so I found their website on it and some stories. First, I think I will cover their proposed maps for the project. The national image shows something rather striking to me considering current events. Whether from the East Coast or the West Coast, all of these rail lines converge on Chicago. However, Amtrak's headquarters is in Washington, D.C., and most of the tracks on the map are already in place. They are just seeking expansion. For anyone aware of the state of our nation, we understand that Chicago has a serious crime problem. Back in 2018, a Chicago congressman wanted to ask the United Nations to help out with their crime problem. Amtrak does not own all the track rails it runs on. Currently, it has 44 routes over 21,000 miles. It only owns 623 miles of track. And here's something I have learned while looking into this: that the government has a heavy hand in this for-profit company. Two of the board members are fixed positions. One is the CEO, and the other is the Secretary of Transportation. This sounds like a conflict of interest. Over the years, Amtrak has received plenty of government money. The current Secretary of Transportation, that is also now a board member, is Pete Buttigieg. Yes, that's right, the infamous Pete Buttigieg. Gee, I wonder how much extra money he gets from government subsidies for Amtrak. Amtrak was founded in 1971 during the Nixon administration, the same year that the U.S. was taken off the gold standard. The U.S. Secretary of Transportation then was John Vold, a former Massachusetts governor. The Department of Transportation Act created the Secretary of Transportation position on October 15, 1966. For those that don't know, in Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, 1966 represents Lucifer, the morning star. This act was signed by Lyndon B. Johnson. He wanted a national transportation system with due regard for need, for the environment, and for national defense. Now, with some historical background, we must remember there is an agenda taking place: Build Back Better. During the Trump years, there were fires being set in the cities by the group Antifa. They were just useful idiots. As a result, the property values went down. Thus, the corporations were able to come in and buy up property at a very cheap cost. I should also mention that there were quote-unquote wildfires on the West Coast during this time period also. When I saw those fires, I thought to myself, that looks like a military operation. Armies throughout history have used fire to flush people out. So notice on the West Coast map that Amtrak's rail project runs along the West Coast, much like fires being used as the reason to take people's property in Lahaina. Also on the West Coast, a massive homeless problem was created. Many people started leaving the West Coast states. What does this do to the property values of those West Coast areas? Well, the value drops. Then once again, the corporations can come in and buy up the real estate. Seeing a pattern yet? There seems to be a lot of property acquisition taking place, and let's not forget eminent domain and civil forfeiture. Since I live in Texas, I will show the Texas part of the rail line. In Texas, there is something called the Texas Triangle. It uses the highway system that connects Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. The new Amtrak project is similar, although not all of it goes alongside the highway. It still has the triangle shape though. The rulers love their pyramids. So when I see this, I think about the other areas of the country that properties have been devalued for various reasons. Then I wonder, what will happen to these areas along the new Amtrak route? Recently, there was a property tax debate in Texas. I'm not going to get into the details of that, other than to say I don't take the story at face value. I know Texas is going along with the global agenda. Here's a brief summary of what Amtrak is projecting. Amtrak officials were waiting on federal funding to expand their routes. Now, this was written a year or two ago, so they were probably waiting on the infrastructure bill, also known as the Build Back Better plan. Next, the transit company hopes to connect major Texas cities with its other 31 major metropolitan areas. Also, Texas will gain 3 round-trip routes between Houston and DFW, 3 round trips between Houston and San Antonio, and 2 round trips between DFW and Austin-San Antonio. Finally, the price tag for the nationwide project would total around $500 million. By the time they're done with it, though, I'm sure it'll be $3 billion. Now, I mentioned that this was written a year or two ago. So here's one article showing that yes, they will get money from the infrastructure bill. Amtrak will receive $22 billion, which is way more than the proposed cost of $500 million. So where's all the extra money going? To Pete Buttigieg? The people that will likely work on the Texas part of this new rail project will be those coming across the border and stationed north of Houston in New Colonia. And because I noticed the spiritual side of things, in the infrastructure bill, there's $66 billion for rail projects. 66 is the number of Apollo. Remember, in Star Wars, they had Order 66. This is when a reversal or inversion took place. Just recently, a former guitarist of Judas Priest came out with a song called Hymn 66. But I know I lose people when I talk about that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to go too deep into this subject. You can look this up and see if this Amtrak rail project is affecting your area. This rail project will likely tie into the smart cities concept. Thanks for watching.
66 66